Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host Kenny Bedwell, and we're going to be talking about the number one hack to scale your STR business. Funny tangent before I dive into the actual hack itself. I was somebody emailed me, responded to one of my emails. If you're not on my email list, get on my email list. Go to strinsights.com and create an account, and you'll be on my email list. So I sent an email. I was talking about STRs and how great they are, whatever, STR stuff. And this person already subscribed to the software and they're like, what the heck does STR mean? I'm like, short term rental. But so we're talking about the number one hack to scale your short term rental business, but I'm going to call it STR from now on because I'm lazy. All right, let's dive into it. So, um, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make getting into this industry, especially if you're sitting here going, hey, I want to get my time freedom back, or not even back, just get it in general, or have more time with my family or whatever, cut back my job hours. If you're a 9 to 5 employee, I'm especially speaking to you. If you're a 9 to 5 employee and you're sitting there going, like, this is why I'm investing in short term rentals. Maybe I have one or I don't have any at all, but this is why I want to do it. The number one mistake I see those types of people make is they end up trading a job for another job. Okay, what do I mean by that? Meaning they end up scaling their business slowly, but they focus on getting doors, quantity of doors, rather than quality of doors, rather than cash flow. I was having an interesting conversation. I went to a summit in Denver, Colorado. Shout out to everybody from Denver who's listening. I had a conversation with some lady at a meetup. So I spoke at the meetup and she came up to me afterwards and was talking to me and she's like, well, how many properties do you have? And I said, today I have 4. And she's like, what do you mean by today? And I was like, well, at one point I had 6, then I had 3, and then I had 4. Like, boom, like I'm at 4. And she's like, well, why don't you have more? Why did you, not keep the 6? And I was like, look, like my time is precious and my time is limited. Therefore, I can't take on, just doors. I need quality of doors. And I said, I had 6 at one point. I've had 2. I went from 6 down to 2 and then back up again. And it's going to vary. It's going to hover around that 5 and it won't be more than that ever, ever, ever. So because I cannot deal with more properties, it's all about the cash flow for me. And hopefully you've grasped that concept and you understand that by now. But the reality is, like, your time is precious, and the more doors you take on, the more houses you take on, whether that's property management, co-hosting, or just acquisition in general, you create more jobs because short-term rentals is active investing. It's an active income. It's an active business. You have to be readily available to deal with guests and messaging and pricing and all the other good stuff that comes from investing in short-term rentals. It ends up taking a lot of time, and you can create another or a second job, which I actually see this all the time happening, especially to some of the people I've been following or my friends from years ago when we started investing in short-term rentals, and I've seen their growth and development. They've literally traded a job for another job, and it's a little confusing to me because I'm like, wasn't your goal to like leave your 9 to 5 to have more freedom with your family? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, do you feel like you have that with your short-term rentals? And they're like, not really. I still have to be accessible to Wi-Fi. I can't go anywhere without Wi-Fi in case a guest messages me. And therein lies the problem. So the point of today's episode and the goal of today's episode is to teach you how to scale a business without creating a job for yourself. Okay? Because you don't want to trade a job for another job. Even if the second job is cooler and maybe easier and less stressful or whatever, that's fine and all. But we want to get away from this like employee mindset. And 98% of the people out in the world have an employee mindset because they've only worked 9 to 5 jobs. They've always had a boss and they never understood this concept of like how to run and scale a business. And even people who are trying to run and scale businesses aren't even that successful at it. So it's something that very, very few, a minute percentage of the population understands how to do and how to pull off successfully. Please don't take that as me lecturing you and telling you that, oh, I've done it and I've been there. Because the reality is, like, I've only been in this game for 6 years. Okay. I'm just a little bit further ahead than other people. And I've had some successes and I've found things that work in my own personal life with work-life balance and maybe things that haven't worked. I found a lot of that. So, and that's what I want to share with you today. And so what is my number one hack to scaling your business? And that is hiring the right team. Okay. Now, not necessarily cleaners and handyman and local boots on the ground. That's obviously like the dead giveaway in terms of you have to have that in order to survive. But what I'm talking about is the right virtual team. Okay. So as an investor, I have a VA team. So I have a personal assistant. So we're going to be talking, sorry, let me stop with the acronyms. VA virtual assistant. Okay. So when I say VA, that's what I mean, virtual assistant. I don't mean Virginia or the Veterans Association or anything like that. It's virtual assistant. So I have a personal assistant who is a VA, and I also have VAs that manage pricing. They can manage guest communication if I want them to. And yeah, I mean, I do have a whole team that does that for some of the properties. And the reality is, I'm going to tell you a secret about me that I don't really tell a lot of people. I hate managing properties. Despise it. Hate it. Because it's just like, and people are annoying. I get dumb questions all the time, and I'm like, read the guidebook. Or, smiley face, because you don't want to be like too coarse on that. But it's like, read the guidebook. Or, just repeating questions like, how do we get inside the house? It's like, well, read the check-in instructions that were just sent to you like an hour ago. Or the day before, or whatever it is. Like, just stupid stuff like that has really bothered me over time. Now, I will say I am smart enough to recognize that and get out of that. And the way I've done that is through hiring virtual assistants. Virtual assistants are people who live overseas, or they could be in the country, but they tend to be more expensive. So people who live overseas that are more affordable. And usually, I mean, they could be, I know there's VAs in the South America and in India and Ukraine, even, well, okay, at one point. And the Philippines is the most common one. And so all of mine are from the Philippines. And they handled some of the day-to-day operations that are repetitive that I don't necessarily want to deal with. And so as you scale, you really need to prioritize. Obviously, we spend a lot of time talking about cash flow, but you also need to prioritize scaling your business with the right team around you so you can get your time back. Because ultimately, that's the goal, right? If it's not, go ahead and hit skip on this episode. If it is, then you really need to consider hiring virtual assistants. As you grow and scale, you really have three options technically, but I think two are pretty much the same, which is number one, you end up hiring a co-host or property manager. Okay. I think they're pretty much the same thing, even though you could fight me over the differences. I don't really care. It's pretty much the same thing. Co-host or property manager. Or option number two, you hire virtual assistants. It's literally impossible to try to manage all of the properties yourself, especially when you hit a certain number. So if you understand that concept, there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only so much time that you can handle messaging and dealing with stuff and all these other things. You will have to hire people. Okay. So as you're growing, most of the people listening to this you might not even have one property, but most people have one to maybe five. All right. And the reality is, you don't need to have a team of people. You need to have one person, or maybe two people, or two VAs, I should say. And that will help you get rid of some of the tasks that are kind of mundane, some of the tasks that are very repetitive, some of those, early in the middle of night messages and things like you don't want to deal with. Obviously, we have software and technology that can assist with this, but the VAs can help do the things that you cannot consistently do, and frankly, that you shouldn't be consistently doing. Okay. Your job as CEO of your business, and we talked about this, I think last week when we did the CEO mindset, where we talked about your job is to focus on growth, focus on how can I get to the next level? What can I do to bring my business success and things like that on long term. But a huge part of this business is operations. However, operations are very repetitive, and we find ourselves doing the operations and, having to deal with it on a day-to-day basis when you really shouldn't. And virtual assistants are a great way to offset that without having to fork over 15 to 20% of your gross revenue to a co-host or property manager. I personally, and this is no offense to co-hosts, this is no offense to property managers. I do not say your job is pointless or useless, because there's obviously high value in it. And I just said at the beginning that it's pretty much a must. As you scale, you have to hire people to take on these tasks for you because you won't have those time. But I think that they are not needed. You can do everything with the right local team of cleaners and handymen on the ground, and a virtual assistant leading the charge, assuming they understand and they know the right processes and systems in place. Okay. So I personally believe, and it saves you so much time and money. If you have one property, you can probably manage it yourself and not have to do a lot of stuff. But over time, especially if you're like a busy physician or person who has set hours where you can't deal with guest messaging or issues, you probably could afford to hire a virtual assistant, even part time. One of the misconceptions that we think of with VAs is we think, oh, well, I got to hire a VA. It's got to be full time and I've got to figure out everything for them to do and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you don't. Okay. You're not hiring. That's employee mindset. That's kind of how we think in the United States is I got to hire someone. They got to work 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. It's not how it works in the rest of the world. So when you hire a VA, you can hire them part time. You can hire them for 4 hours a week or 10 hours a week, or whatever that is, or to be available. And typically they have other clients they service at the same time too. And so that's a great opportunity to kind of cost share and really, pay $200 to $500 a month for somebody part time to help you with your services that you don't have to deal with. I mean, that's crazy. $200 to $500 a month for a VA part time. I'm saying part time, and to find someone that can help you. And there's a lot of VAs that have worked for Airbnb or have experience working with other hosts and who already know how to do certain things where you're just teaching them the ins and outs of your property or things to say or understand about the area so they can message back or do pricing. There's all different kinds of things that the VAs can do for you, and where you don't have to be the one involved. You can manage. But you must be willing to invest into them. And so as you scale your business, what you're going to find is number one, it requires having a good team, being surrounded by individuals who can help you take those tasks of the repetitive, the mundane tasks that you have to do, the day-to-day tasks, so you can focus on growth. And then the number two thing is you have a team that is reliable, but they also help you. They help you grow. They help you by doing the things that you shouldn't have to focus on. So I love virtual assistants, and personally, I love hiring virtual assistants that are specialized in certain tasks like guest messaging, meaning like, okay, they're from the Philippines. Do they speak English? Yes, they speak English in the Philippines, and they're really, really good at it. In fact, one of my virtual assistants has a British accent. I should probably bring him on here. You wouldn't even know he was from the Philippines. He has you'd think he's from the UK because he has a British accent. And frankly, he speaks and spells better than me. So it's really funny talking to him. And when you see him, you're like, is this really is that that is who he is. And he's really, really good at certain elements. And there's other things that I would like pricing and revenue management. I would not put in front of him because that's not his specialty. And I have other VAs that do that instead. And so I bring in people who are specialized, who are better at certain things than I am. I still have to invest in them and teach them the ropes. If you invest in your team, you'll get a better return, just like your property. When you design and decor, we talked about value adds before. Investing in your property yields a higher ROI. Investing in your people yields a higher time ROI. Okay, I'll say that one more time. Investing in your people yields a higher time ROI for you. And that's really what you're looking for. That's really your why. So if we understand our why, then we know we have to push some of these things off and build our team and grow our systems and rely on others, which is totally fine and part of it. And the most affordable way to do that is through hiring VAs. So I'm obviously a big believer in VAs. I'm going to, in the next episode, I'm not going to spill the beans on the whole, this is how you hire them. This is where you hire them, because in the next episode, we're going to cover all those different things. In my career, I've hired over 22 different virtual assistants. I would say 20 out of the 22 were excellent workers and really, really capable and awesome, and 2 were not. And the reason why is because I didn't follow a process of hiring. If you're in the private STR Insights graduate community for our property finder services, you will find our trainings on hiring, where to hire, how to hire, and all the different things on how to not mess that up in that private community for our graduate students, because I know a lot of you listen to my podcast. So thank you again for listening. But guys, the next episode, I bring on a special guest who has a virtual assistant, not community, company where she hires and matches VAs with short-term rental hosts. And I want you to listen to her stories, but more importantly, listen to her processes, how she finds them, how she trains them, the time she takes in those key elements. And we'll all go back to this concept of invest in your people, invest in them to get a better time ROI. And I'm telling you right now, if you do these things, you're going to see a lot more time freedom, but it takes some time up front. So be prepared. It isn't a magic bullet. It isn't something you can just flip, turn it over to somebody and expect the same results of what you're getting. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Cash Flow Positive. I think my daughter's crying in the background, so I'm going to peace out. And I will see you on the next episode.